Inflammation is a natural response of our immune system. But chronic inflammation is different. And we know that chronic inflammation is what underlies a lot of chronic diseases. This includes things like heart disease, diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, and even more. And a lot of people have this chronic inflammation in their body, whether it's things that they're doing that's just wrong throughout the day, or different diets that are, again, just bad for you. So how can we start to reduce this inflammation and keep us healthy? So one obvious way to reduce inflammation is to have an anti-inflammatory diet. Makes sense, right? So what are some naturally anti-inflammatory foods? So things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats, all of these are thought of as healthy, and there's a reason for it. So some of the best fruits to lower your inflammation are going to be berries. So for example, blueberries. Blueberries are loaded with antioxidants, and antioxidants are going to be what fights off oxidative stress in your body. You also want to incorporate leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables, things like broccoli and cauliflower. And also, again, whole grains. So there's a big stigma around carbs. And a lot of people say that you should just cut out carbs entirely because carbs are just bad for you. But most people who say that are actually eating too much refined carbs. So a grain has three different parts. It has the bran, which is on the outside. Then in the middle, it has the endosperm. And on the very most inside, it has the germ layer. Now, a whole grain is going to have all three of these parts. So you're eating kind of like the whole food. But refined grains are only going to have one of these three parts. They're going to have the endosperm. Now, the endosperm is basically the most unhealthy part of the grain. Now, when you isolate just that part and only eat these refined grains, that's what's going to be really unhealthy for you, and that's going to actually contribute to more inflammation. But when you eat the whole food and you get all three parts of this grain, that's actually going to reduce your inflammation. And also, you want to eat good fats. So some simple ones are adding nuts to your diet and avocados because they're delicious. You can also add different spices too to lower your inflammation. So one is turmeric. So turmeric has gotten praised as being this super healthy food, and it's kind of recently spiked up. But it was actually in Indian diets for a long time before that happened. So you can add turmeric to different meals as you're cooking, and it has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. And also two other foods you can add to your meals, which have also been a big part of Indian diets, but also a big part of American diets, are garlic and ginger. Both of these also reduce inflammation. Now, going off of that, you also want to reduce inflammatory foods. Makes sense, right? So what are things that are going to cause inflammation? So these are going to be things like deli meats or hot dogs or crackers or white bread. All of these things are going to be really bad for you. And the problem is a lot of these foods have become a staple in a lot of our diets. And this is what we really need to change. We need to go back to eating real foods that do not cause this inflammation and lead to these chronic diseases. So another way to reduce inflammation is by exercising. So whether you're doing resistance training or cardio, both of these are going to help. I recommend doing both. For example, I like to spend a couple days a week on doing cardio, and I like to spend the rest of the days a week on actually doing weight training. Now, just because I like doing that doesn't mean that you have to do that. Everyone's a little different, but I think everyone should still be incorporating both of these. Not only does exercise make you feel and look good, studies show that it actually reduces inflammation. So the next thing I have is going to be very crucial for managing inflammation. It's going to be getting good sleep. So sleeping wrong will actually contribute to chronic stress and chronic inflammation throughout your body. So studies show that sleep disturbances actually contribute to chronic inflammation and also all-cause mortality, which is basically dying for one reason or another. But also, if you sleep and you have some sort of airway obstruction, or if you have sleep apnea, this will also contribute to chronic inflammation in your body. So I made some other videos on how you can manage your sleep and sleep better, so I'm gonna put a link in the description below, so make sure you check that out. But the big things when it comes to sleep is gonna be one, controlling your circadian rhythm. So your circadian rhythm is your body's internal clock, and it's really important to keep your sleep consistent by sleeping and waking up at relatively consistent times. And you also wanna make sure you're sleeping in a dark environment, because your circadian rhythm, when it sees darkness, this is what helps release melatonin. And this is also what helps tell your body it's time to go to sleep and helps you stay asleep and get good quality sleep. And you also want to make sure you're breathing correctly when you're sleeping. Because again, if you're breathing incorrectly, this is going to lead to chronic stress and chronic inflammation and contribute to a lot of other diseases that you may not even know about. So you want to make sure you really incorporate nasal breathing. So one way you can do this is by simply using a piece of mouth tape that tapes over your mouth at night so that you're forced to use your nose to breathe. You can also use a nasal dilator strip, which will help expand your nasal passages and allow air to flow easier. And you also want to practice breathing with your diaphragm. So your diaphragm is this muscle that rests right underneath your lungs. So when you engage your diaphragm while breathing, this is going to help ensure that you're filling up your lungs' entire capacity with air. And it's also going to help ensure that you're breathing more efficiently when you're sleeping. Now, the last tip I have to manage inflammation is to manage your stress. So one thing we know is that chronic stress can trigger chronic inflammation. So stress is our body's fight and flight response. And this response is meant to be very short-lived. But today's stressors are a little different. Now people are stressed out when they're stuck in traffic, or if they're late for a meeting, or if they're late to meet their boss. All of these things are not going to kill you, but they may hurt your life in some other ways. So I can totally see why you'd be stressed out. I mean, I'm still stressed out when I'm late for work. But the problem is our bodies are stressed out way too frequently compared to how they're supposed to be. And this chronic stress that we all have is going to lead to a lot of other chronic issues, including chronic inflammation. So what is a great way to lower your stress? Well, the biggest one is going to be breathing exercises. So again, you want to make sure you involve nasal breathing, because the more that you involve nasal breathing, the more that this will involve your parasympathetic mode in your body, which is your body's rest and relax mode. But if you're always breathing through your mouth and you're taking these quicker, shallower breaths, this is going to lead to a chronic stress response in your body. This is going to lead to a lot of anxiety and potentially depression and a lot of stress. Now, you can also manage your stress by changing the way you react to certain situations. So if you're stuck in traffic, you can either yell and shout at the person in front of you, which will get you nowhere, or you can just accept your fate and know that you're going to be late. Obviously, that one's harder to do, so I really recommend you practice that nasal breathing, especially when you're at home and already relaxed. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked that video, and if you haven't already, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel below. I will see you in the next video.